The views and opinions expressed on the cap are those of the hosts. They do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of OldMilk Media. Any opinions stated aren't intended to offend anyone. On this episode of the Cap Podcast, we will react to GNX by Kendrick Lamar. Welcome back. This is episode 524 of your critical but accurate tour through hip hop, the Cap Podcast. We are your tour guides. I am Nate Sperling. That is Taylor McLeod. Thank you for watching on YouTube, listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever else you might be tuning in. Feel free to join the conversation by leaving a comment in the comment section below, liking this video, subscribing to the channel, sharing with your friends. All that is appreciated. That being said, Taylor, how are you doing today?
Man, well, we're back watching our, I don't know, man, wonderful. I don't know if that's the right word, alma mater, play
Mm-hmm.
football. Next week we'll be in person
Yes.
watching our alma mater play football, which is very exciting. But as it pertains to music, man, I know like what's the fourth best like TDE or TDE adjacent album of the year.
What you're saying? This one is the fourth best?
I just know which one is like the fourth best now. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
okay. So what's the fourth best?
Oh, I mean, we'll get into it, but I mean, I just like know which one is the fourth best at this point, and this one really helped me figure that out.
Okay. All right. So without further ado, once again, on this episode, we are talking about GNX by Kendrick Lamar. The project, I'm afraid to call it an album, and we'll get into that why into the reasons why later. But the project is 12 tracks, 44 minutes long, featuring SZA twice, Dodie Six twice, Ink, Roddy Rich, Sam Do, Ash Chike, um, Hit a J3, Peso, and Young Threat. Once again, join the conversation by leaving a comment in the comment section below. That being said, Taylor, what were your thoughts about GNX?
So my initial reaction, I talked to you a little bit about this morning. I really have to like stop. I have to stop like not even participating, but consuming like the discussion about albums right when they or projects or whatever. Because I agree with you that I'm not. This is like I think right now it's considered a studio album, but it doesn't necessarily feel like it.
Mm,
But I have to stop like trying to keep an eye on like what the conversation is right when something drops because it used to be fun. You know what I mean? It used to be fun to be like, oh, something came out, like I'm gonna get on Twitter and see what's going on. You know what I mean? Not necessarily like form my opinions based on that, but it's not fun anymore. Because it
yeah.
used to be like only the people who really cared, right, were doing that, and now it's everyone. Um, so that's like that was my knee-jerk reaction because you hear the album and you have people being like, is this a classic? When it's been out not even enough time to listen to the entire album,
Hmm.
right? So like the whole conversation with myself gets so polluted. Um, so that's where I would start, even though it's unfair to the music and it's unfair to Kendrick Lamar to start there. But that's just like where I'm coming from. As it pertains to the music, it's Kendrick, man. So like it's good. You know what I mean? Like I would never expect bad music from Kendrick Lamar. Like out of all the artists, out right now who have been out for a long time, a short amount of time, like he's probably the number one artist that I trust to put, good product out.
Hmm.
So the music is good. There's certain things here that I wouldn't even say aren't for me. There's certain things here that like I can't ignore certain context, even though I should. And I'm not talking social media, but certain context. But we'll get into it. So I think the music is great. Expected it to be great. It is great. The surprise release was a surprise. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like we didn't expect it. But I'm curious to hear what you have to say, really getting into it before I get into it with you.
Okay. So my expectations, it's crazy because like the trailer dropped 10 minutes before the album dropped. And I saw the trailer. I didn't really watch it because I was just in my head. I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna watch this later because obviously I wasn't expecting an album to drop 10 minutes later. And also like I didn't really like, like I've said this before, like until I see like an actual announcement for music, like an actual date, an actual track list, an actual album cover, something like that, I don't really take it seriously. So I didn't take it seriously. And then the music dropped, and then I was like, oh shit, I have to take it seriously. So because of that, I had to rush to write down my expectations. And I think my expectations are pretty reasonable. I expected Kendrick Lamar to continue being the greatest rapper of my lifetime by maintaining his artistic identity while reinventing himself as he is known for. I also expect him to give listeners more of a taste of what the PG Lang era will of his career will be. And I also expected him to clean up a lot of the residual mess from his win in his battle with Drake. And I think he got all three done. In terms of the packaging, the name of this album is inspired by the Buick GNX, and that was released in 1987, which was the same year Kendrick Lamar was born. The album cover also pictures Kendrick Lamar standing next to a Buick GNX. Additionally, as it was pointed out to me, Kendrick has been dropping like little seedlings of this album the whole time. Like if you go to his Harper's Bazaar interview, like he's pictured with a Buick GNX. There are other points where he's pictured with that car. So I find that to be masterful. I believe it's called breadcrumbing. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, I find that to be masterful, what Kendrick Lamar did. Additionally to that, um, I think that a lot of these songs are inspired by music that Kendrick Lamar would listen to um as he was in a Buick GNX at that time, or at that time when he was just in his formative years. And I also think the album cover could be a response to Drake getting that minivan from the one that's pictured on the Good Kid, Mad City cover, or finding something similar to that, and crushing it in the was that the Family Matters music
yeah,
video? Yeah, so I think that could be the use of a new car could be a response to that. Um, my first thoughts are the timing of this release is interesting because it's also timely because a week ago, I believe he was credited as having the most impactful year in hip hop, and a lot of the criticism was, how can you have the most impactful year in hip hop if you didn't release an album? Which is valid criticism, but at the same time, I think the beef that he had with Drake makes him the most impactful. So I can see both sides of that. So, but him releasing an album now just completely invalidates that criticism now, especially an album of this caliber. I also think it's also interesting because J. Cole is currently releasing all of his mixtapes on platforms, on streaming platforms, and it seems to it could be interpreted of some type of rollout of some sort, and Kendrick just like cut right in the middle of that. Nobody like I don't really think anyone really cares about J. Cole at this moment because Kendrick dropped. And also the timing is also interesting because apparently November 22nd is the anniversary of JFK's assassination. And that follows
sure is.
through of the line headshot for the year on Euphoria. Um, I feel like this album doesn't, it's not as focused as on social commentary in terms of the ether as previous Kendrick Lamar albums are. It's more like there is commentary there, but Kendrick seems to be having more fun with this. I think the production on his album is amazing. I think that the beats that have mustard on it are the best. Um, I think that also this is just such a great fun listen that sometimes, at least throughout my first listen, I kind of forgot that I was supposed to be reading through the lyrics and trying to decode what Kendrick's saying because it's such a good listen and I get lost in the music, which doesn't really happen often for me. Um, I also think that this album does a good job of addressing all the residual, like I said before, all the residual rumors and takes after the Kendrick Lamar W with his beef with Drake. I also like the Mexican music influence. I think that adds to I think this the purpose of this album is for Kendrick Lamar to be authentically West Coast, and I think the touch of the Mexican music in certain parts add to that and bring that more to the forefront, makes it more authentic to LA. There are certain songs that we'll get into where it kind of like places me in a moment where I think about like watching movies like Boys in the Hood or Menace to Society, and I'm thinking about scenes like even like watching Snowfall and stuff like that, thinking about that era, and it kind of like places me in that moment in those movies in those TV shows. And the last thing I'll say, the reason why I'm hesitant to really call this an album is because the track listing doesn't really seem as focused. Like it's still great, like don't get me wrong, but it doesn't seem as focused as a Kendrick Lamar album. And the second thing is typically we get one an installation of the Heart series from Kendrick Lamar before we get the actual album. So it's interesting to me that Heart Part 6 is a song on this project, and that could hint that this project serves functionally as an installment of the Heart series. And then there's some new music that we can possibly expect in the future.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's certainly possible. I think that the idea that he'll drop something either before or after the Super Bowl, but sometime close to when he performs at the Super Bowl, I think that's super valid too. And I think that makes a lot of sense if that happens. So the reason I said I think this is the fourth best TDE or TDE adjacent, right? Because
Mhm.
I don't want to lump this in with TDE. I understand that, and I like that you made that distinction with the PG Lang era because this does sound different, right? Like this does sound different. This is I wouldn't say way more LA because it's hard to be like Kendrick's music at any point has not been LA because like
Mhm.
he is LA. Um, but the reason I said it is, and I think part of your points that make this and I think fun is the perfect word, right? Because this is like Kendrick having fun in a way that
Yeah.
like we haven't really seen since he used to be like on social media a lot. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? Like when he used to like show his personality more often,
Mhm.
uh, then it was like, yeah, he's like this incredibly gifted rapper, this incredibly gifted artist, this dialed in, like super intentional. But you also used to get like the other side of it, right? Where he
Yeah.
could like, and we don't get that really anymore, right? Like you get his humor through music, like especially with the Drake stuff. Like you definitely there's a lot of like obviously there's a lot of serious stuff that happened in that, but there's also like a lot of humor, a lot of bars that are funny, a lot of
Mhm.
songs that are funny. Um, but like you said, I think this feels at least uh less like any other album or project that he's put out since Good Kid, Mad City came out, where it seemed like it was like classic. For me, not a classic and damn, but I understand why people feel it is. To Mr. Morale, which was, incredibly vulnerable and eye-opening in a way that maybe other music hasn't been. But what I mean by the fourth best, right, is I think Blue Lips, I think Alligator Bites Never Heal, and I think Soul Burger
Mhm.
from Q Dochi and Absol, especially the Absol album. I've still been listening to that, and I'm
Yeah.
like I think those ones are just like they're more albums, right? They're more
Yeah.
put together, constructed for a purpose. Not to say that this isn't, right? And I don't want to act like that. But there's just something about this like when I'm like, oh, Kendrick's dropping, I'm expecting like this grandiose masterpiece, right? Like
Mhm.
this thing that and this isn't that, and that's fine, right? This is like way more, I think, pure hip hop, West Coast hip hop, and I do enjoy that, right? Like I do enjoy that. It almost caught me off guard the way that it sounds, not the sonic sound, but the way like yeah, he's going through like some serious stuff, and you have songs in here like Reincarnated and Man at the Garden that are, legitimately like, focused, and there's not really any humor, right, in those tracks. But I think this feels more like a Kendrick Lamar mixtape, which feels crazy to
Mhm.
say it in 2024, but that's what it feels like to me. And so like when I'm stacking up West Coast albums, when I'm stacking up albums from, that specific group, I think it falls under them. I see people like being like, "Oh my God, is this a classic already?" And I'm like, first of all, it's way too early,
Mhm.
right, to make that call. But I don't even think this is aimed at doing that. I don't think this is aimed at being, one of those like it's not Good Kid, Mad City, right? It's not To Pimp a Butterfly. It's not Damn. It's not Mr. Morale, and that's fine. And honestly, it's a good thing, right? Because like we got to see him having fun with the whole Baby Keem rollout and the two tracks that he was on Melodic Blue, right? And then so it's this continuation. I feel like it's this like this transformation into like a late 30s Kendrick that like I don't think any of us saw it coming. Because I think if you had asked us, right, when me and you were freshmen in college and Damn came out, right, and we were like, do you think it's going to become more avant-garde or like more raw as years
Mhm.
go on? I think we definitely would have been like, oh, it's going to keep getting like more complicated, more layers, more that, and then you get something like this, and it's just like, oh no, it's like fully in your face, and I enjoy that. I enjoy that a lot. Like and that's where I can remove the conversation around it and say like this is a super fun project to listen to, right? There's certainly
Yeah.
like a lot of aggressiveness on here, but like it's fun, right? Like you get, and I'm not even talking like the mustard moment, right? Like, because
Hey,
that's
hey, hey,
obviously
hey,
like
hey.
but like the squabble up in the turn the TV off, right? All that
Hmm.
stuff. That's like it's like the top of the morning, right? From the Keem track, where
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
you get to see that like he's a hilarious guy and the way he can weave it through his music in a way that it's like so it gets stuck in your head. It's like an earworm, and it gets like it's not like it's not like other rappers who have like funny bars and you're like, oh, he's so funny. It's like, Kendrick's like crazy, like fully like crazy, but like he knows what works, right? He's also like an incredible entertainer. And so I can appreciate all that. I know as we get song through song, I'll have not even criticism necessarily. It's just some like I think certain things with the residual from the beef, and it's not because I'm a Drake fan. Like, and I would hope, right? I would hope that
Hmm.
you can at least believe that I'm not coming at this like, oh, like, fuck this because like
Yeah.
it's the Drake thing. Like, I'm not. You know what I mean? Like, I've listened to Kendrick just as long as I listen to Drake.
Hmm.
So I think that's where I start to get into some stuff that like isn't my favorite or certain things that don't get addressed that I'm like, all right, man, like if one person's held to this like standard, then, but at the same time, like that's just how it goes sometimes.
Yeah. I've said it before and I'll say it again. You're probably the most logical Drake fan I know. Um, but that being said, also I disagree with you with this being the fourth best TDE adjacent album. I think it's top two. I think maybe you might be able to guess what it's top two with, but that's a conversation for a different episode, as we have already privately discussed. So let's get to the first track, which arguably could be the most important track, Whacked Out Murals, where Kendrick comes out directly swinging, talking about the backhanded compliments that he received, addressing Lil Wayne crying about the Super Bowl, and Snoop Dogg trying to remain neutral in between Drake and Kendrick Lamar. They have both Lil Wayne and Snoop Dogg responded to Kendrick Lamar on Twitter. Snoop Dogg kind of took it more in stride, kind of saying like, "Yo, like you kind of right, my fault." And Lil Wayne kept crying, and I find it annoying that Lil Wayne keeps doing this because, first of all, it's not a precedent that whoever's in the host city performs the Super Bowl. That was never a precedent. That really only happened one time. And that video was so lame. And it happened after the fans, who are also Drake fans, who also are interested in seeing any type of Kendrick Lamar takedown. Um, After those fans started being like, why didn't Lil Wayne get it? It was in New Orleans. So for Lil Wayne to tweet and be like, what did I do? Like, come on. Like my issue is if you like either say you were wrong or keep standing on what you're saying, but don't play the victim because you started it. Um, yeah. Kendrick also calls out a few more things that he finds distasteful within the culture on this song. And also, I want to know what that redacted line is in the first verse.
Yeah, I we're never gonna know, right? Unless he performs it. Like if he tours this album and he performs it. But if I had to guess, we'll never know because
Hmm.
this is where I start to get into some stuff that I don't like about what's happening, and I think that there is like a level of hypocrisy going on, not from Kendrick himself, right? I
Hmm.
don't feel that from him, but like the people that are associated with him or in his fans, like you got these people on Twitter that are like, right, Kendrick doesn't tweet anything, he doesn't play the social media games, but then you have people around him who do, right? And
Hmm.
they like get these little jokes off and they act like, oh, like we're not playing any of these games with you. And it's like, no, you are though. Like you definitely are. Like, you have Daylight tweeting random shit, DJ Head tweeting random shit, right? And it obviously, like, I don't know these people, man. I don't ultimately it doesn't affect me at all. But you have this stuff where it's like, oh, I don't do the social media stuff, and it's like, no, but you just have a bunch of people around you who do, and that's
Hmm.
fine. And again, that's why I don't have a problem with what Kendrick's doing. I think certain things in this song within the context of the beef that happened earlier this year, and also the Future interview that was in GQ earlier this week, where Future was like, "Yo, he got on my song talking about a big three, but he's not talking about me." Like I think there's certain things, and I think the perfect word to describe all this is like Machiavellian, right? Like the ends
Hmm.
justify the means, and that's obviously like a call to Tupac, right? With the like Machiavelli, like he had those same concepts, and obviously, like for a long time now, Kendrick has like, you know, he told us that he feels the spirit of like Tupac,
Hmm.
like going through him when he is rapping, and obviously on Reincarnated, we get like maybe the clearest example of that ever, right? But you have certain things where it's like Kendrick has a lot of criticisms of things, but then he does certain things that should also be criticized, but don't get criticized. And I get it, right? He's Kendrick Lamar, and he's earned like a level of, he just does what he wants. And the thing is too, he tells you he's gonna do what he wants, and he
Hmm.
tells you he's gonna do what he needs to, and he lays it all out, right? So that's why I don't have as big of a problem with what he has going on. But I do think there is like been a level of like uh people not being held to the same standards, not standards, but just like same expectations. And I think this song, this song is my favorite song on the album, Whacked Out
Hmm.
Murals. I think it comes out, I think like you said, it really ties up a lot of loose ends um from the Drake beef. And it also just shows that like, yeah, Kendrick's like it is on the whole like, I don't do this for the internet, but he sees everything.
Yeah.
Right, like it's not like, yeah, he might not be on here like me and you, right? Like just like regular people on Twitter and Instagram and stuff, but he sees everything that's going on. And he it's just like a level of participation that he doesn't have. Um, but there are certain things here where I'm like, all right, like you're fully like Machiavellian right now because you're talking about Drake using people, and then Future's like feeling like he kind of got his like songs taken, right, to start this shit off, and it's like, all right, but again, and this is what Kendrick does better than maybe everyone else.
Hmm.
He just says like, yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Right, like he says it. He's like, I am doing what I am doing, and he's gonna protect the real people in his life and the people around him in real life. But
Hmm.
like when it comes to the rap stuff, it's like, no, I'm gonna move how I want to move and move how I'm supposed to move. So I don't know. I come out of this song and I come out of a lot of this project like feeling very conflicted
Hmm.
because I think like there's certain things, right? Like everyone, right, when it happened, when the Drake beef happened, it's like, oh, Drake has to address everything that Kendrick said about him, right? Everything. And then he does it, and everyone's like, oh no, like that sucked. You know what I mean? Like that was awful. But there's no expectation for Kendrick to talk about anything Drake says because everyone's like, oh, and this is where me and you have talked about it a million times.
Hmm.
Like the whole thing isn't Kendrick fans versus Drake fans. It's Kendrick fans and people who don't like Drake
Hmm.
all together. And that's a
Hmm.
lot of people, right? So you
Yeah.
get this like this echo chamber, and it is what it is, man. Like I'm not trying to get on here and relitigate this beef, right? But I do think when you start tying up loose ends, it is like I don't know, man. Like there are certain things that if we're really playing fair here, didn't happen on both sides. But again, then he's like, we're not playing fair. Like I'm me, and I'm gonna keep doing me.
Okay. I feel like I need to push back a little bit. I feel like with the future thing, that doesn't make sense to me at all because the first song is literally dissing Drake, and now you're feeling a type of way because someone else had more energy towards the
Abs
person that you were dissing. That makes no sense to me at
and yeah,
all.
him and Metro like trying to like soften the beef in that GQ interview is kind of like strange to me. So I'm
And
not saying like that isn't my biggest point. So
yeah,
I
no,
understand what
I
you're
get
saying, but
you.
that's not.
But that goes back to the other thing I was saying about Wayne, where it's like stand on what you said or say you were wrong. But don't be in the middle talking about I'm a victim. Oh, this happened to me. I didn't know this was gonna happen to me. Blah 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 blah. I have no sympathy for that at all. Especially when you look at Future, he's 41. When I start talking about like the fact that these people are actually like been adults for decades. Lil Wayne is like 45. I don't have any sympathy for this. And I love Future, but I just don't have any sympathy for this. For the other part, I feel like Drake first of all, a lot of Drake fans are also not playing fair. So I feel like, to your point, the numbers seem to be on Kendrick's side, but I don't think any side is playing fair. Like it started
No.
off being, oh, Drake is so clearly better than Kendrick Lamar. There's no way Kendrick Lamar could beat Drake in a rap beef. And then when Kendrick Lamar, the songs go back and forth, and then Kendrick Lamar wins, then it's oh Drake was the underdog the whole time. Like how could you think that he could beat Kendrick? Like everyone would say drop Kendrick. He's so scared to drop, and then he drops, and then like it. I don't have any type of sympathy for the double standard that
Well,
it
and this
could
yeah,
appear.
And
because
this
you
is where
can't
fans don't
be,
matter.
yeah, like you can't be on both sides. But even like to that point, Drake was the one saying in one of the first ones, he's like drop, 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 and it's
Yeah,
like
and then he did it. But like Drake has stood on that the whole time. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's just
yeah, but
like
like
this is where the fans ruin
yeah,
so
but
much.
my whole thing is that Drake said what he had to say. I could respect the fact that he's still standing on what he had to say. Kendrick is clearly still standing on what he has to say. Everybody else in the middle, whether what other side you're on, even the
Yep.
artists are not standing on the
And
only
it's so
people
annoying.
around people, the only people who are adjacent to this that are still standing on things are the people in TDE and the people in Drake's camp. Everybody else in the middle and the people directly in Drake's camp. Because you could argue that Lil Wayne is in Drake's camp, even though it's kind of iffy. You could argue that Nicki Minaj is in Drake's camp, even though it's kind of iffy. But at the same time, Chubbs, I haven't heard Chubbs backtrack one thing. I haven't heard Punch Top Dog backtrack one thing. And that's
Right.
how it's supposed to be. So everybody else in the middle trying to cry victim because the best rapper alive is doing what the best rapper alive can do. I have no sympathy for that. I do
No, and
want
you
to move on.
shouldn't. Yeah, we have to.
We literally have to. Squabble Up is amazing to me because I believe, or as far as I can remember, because there were a few songs off of To Pimp a Butterfly or in that era where we heard snippets of them and they never came out.
Yeah.
This one, we heard the snippet of it on the Not Like Us music video, and it came out. Hang the Banner. This is amazing. And the song, first of all, it's Kendrick. You know it's gonna be amazing. But the song is amazing. Hang the Banner. That's what I have to say about Squabble Up. One of my favorite tracks, for sure.
Yeah. It didn't do it for me, but that's just like, that's just like personal opinion. That's not
Mhm.
like I don't think it's bad. It's just not my favorite here.
Okay. I do want to move on. Luther, I love the fact that I'm just gonna go quick, real quick. And if you have a comment, let me know because
Yep.
we do have limited time. Okay, so Luther, I like that we get a turn from aggressive Kendrick, we get more melodic Kendrick. The chemistry that Kendrick and SZA have on the second verse when they share it and they go back and forth, and then they have their vocals lay over each other. Amazing. Good job. Man at the Garden. I like the track because the beat is very tranquil, and I like that Kendrick uses the word tranquil in the second line of the song. Automatically sold me. Here we're talking about like how Kendrick is talking about how he's doing it with integrity with compared to a lot of these other artists. He is, especially when you're at that big of a height. You usually don't get that big unless you're sacrificing integrity. But Kendrick the whole time has been doing it with integrity, has been keeping the people who he considers family to be family, and things like that. So Man at the Garden, love that track. Hey Now, one of the tracks produced by Mustard as well as Soundwave. Soundwave has production credits on the whole thing, but like I said, the beats with Mustard on them, I think are better or the best. I like the chemistry that Kendrick has with Dodie Six, where they share the third verse and they go back and forth. Amazing. Reincarnated, superior storytelling. People
Yeah.
believe the first verse is about John Lee Hooker, and the second verse is about Denai Washington. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It also samples Tupac's "Made Niggas." Love that. The third verse is also very interesting because you see Kendrick kind of wrestling with the fact that he's trying to create peace in his city, but at the same time he's doing it while creating chaos and hate in hip hop. So it's very interesting to see those two ideas reconnect with each other. I love the fact that he's able to do that. It kind of reminds me of like Mortal Man.
Yeah,
The last track on
exactly.
To Pimp a Butterfly.
Yeah.
TV Off, best song on the album, straight up. Mustard, straight up, best song on the album. Doesn't even
Yeah.
matter. The second album, and that's another beat produced by Mustard. The first half has grown on me a lot. I've listened to this album like 5 times at this point. First half has grown on me a lot. The second half, I knew I was gonna love it in the first place, and I still do. Dodger Blue, I mean, come on, they just won the World Series, but that is the song that puts me in the place where I was talking about earlier when I'm thinking about in the movie when they have the party scene and stuff like
Yeah.
that, like the
Yeah.
lights are all kind of like dim and pink and red and stuff like that. That's where that song puts me. Peekaboo, love that track as well. The marriage between Kendrick and the features on the hooks or on the verses in the hook is crazy. It makes it a nice, catchy listen. I think Kendrick is smart for leaving out the in The Heart Part 6 to reclaim the signature series for his own. I love the fact that he flexes once again his unmatched storytelling by saying or telling a story about how TDE came to be.
Yeah.
Um,
And then the song comes right up to a point where he went on like a pretty big tour. and
Hmm.
things really blew up, right? Like
Yeah.
it brings it right to the point where someone like brought him on tour and it was like this big deal that like this big artist brought this the burgeoning artist on tour, right? But that we
Hmm.
don't get to that in the hard part six, so that's fine.
Yeah. Additionally, I feel like there's one little line where Kendrick is talking about, yo, I wish I could rap like Ab Soul. And I always thought, like, out of the four, Ab Soul and Kendrick probably had the most chemistry. And that kind of verifies it for me because, like, you hear Kendrick saying, like, yo, I want to, like, rap like him. Like, his bars are so crazy. And I like that Kendrick is able, like, Kendrick, as big as he is able to see someone who unfortunately isn't as big as him, but still see the greatness in that and still be able to reflect and acknowledge it 10 years, 15 years later. GNX is very interesting to me because this is probably the first track I see Kendrick has ever taken a back seat on because he's just rapping the hook. He has no verse on the album at all,
Yeah.
on the song at all. But then he has the artists that are featured on the album do their thing on their oh yeah, on the song, my fault, do their thing. And I think that this one here, I think this one addresses the Drake point of why don't you put anyone on from the West Coast. I think that one addresses it completely. And then Gloria, amazing song. SZA once again doing her thing. And then we have Kendrick rapping the story of his relationship, and the major turning points, the failures and the successes.
Yeah.
Um, Anything else before try to quickly wrap this
No,
up?
because it's just going to be more shit that me and you just need to talk about. And
Okay.
it's one of those things where you can go back and forth for hours on it. And you know what I mean? Like
All right.
it's not of really any importance right here.
That being said, what is your playback value objectively and subjectively?
Objectively, I think this is going to get a lot of play. I think TV off is going to like really go. And as people spend more time with this, like squabble up is going to go. So I think objectively, I think this easily has, I don't know, through the Super Bowl until he drops something else, right? And then
Yeah.
subjectively, it's probably the same for me. I'm gonna keep listening to this, the songs that I like. And I also like I'm kind of weird when I listen to music. Like I'll go to an artist and just shuffle everything they've ever done.
Hmm.
So like I do that with Kendrick, so it's like it's gonna be there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's my playback value. I think through the Super Bowl or until new music, this is gonna stay in rotation. And then for me, it's the same thing. And this is like it's Kendrick, so it's timeless for me.
All right. My playback value, objectively, I'll probably say 7 months. I think this could last into the summer. I actually, like, when I was writing this down, I counted on my fingers like how many months until the Super Bowl, and then I counted until how many months till the summer. And yeah, I think objectively 7 months. And then I think for me a year, this will last for a year for me because TV off is probably never leaving. Um, so yeah, that being said, Taylor, what are your final thoughts?
Yeah. So we write these out, and I always try to like not just like read what I wrote. You know what I mean? But I kind of what I wrote is kind of like what I feel here. So like obviously Kendrick like set this year on fire, right? Like the whole beef happened, and he set everything on fire. He gets announced for the Super Bowl, but then things do kind of like quiet down, right? And I thought that like it was kind of like not fizzling out, but like the fire that he set was burning out, and it wasn't going to come back to the Super Bowl because we heard about an album, right? But anyways, so my final thought here is like he set the world on fire this year, and right when you think like that fire is gonna go out, he like drops this album out of nowhere and sets the world back on fire. And I think this is like the perfect combination of aggressiveness and like innovation and like you said, like recreating himself on super heavy West Coast production. Um, but you also have those moments of like that are like smoother and have reflection and have references like you explained with reincarnated, whether it's the instrumental itself or like putting himself in the shoes of artists in the middle of the 20th century. So those are my final thoughts. Like I didn't expect this, and he kind of like reignited the fire that he had already set this year. Um, with an album that it's easy to listen to, it's fun to listen to, and it's like just shows a different side of Kendrick that we haven't gotten in a long time.
Hmm. Top three
And then
tracks?
my favorite tracks are in order are Whacked Out Murals, right? I think that's the best song here. Heart
Mhm.
Part 6 and then Man at the Garden.
Okay. My final thought is Kendrick Lamar takes a successful victory lap after taking the win in his beef Drake, cementing himself for anyone who still had doubts as the best rapper alive. My top three tracks: number three, Heart Part 6, number two, Squabble Up, and number one, TV Off. That being
Can I
said,
ask you a question?
yes, you can.
Like how many times conservatively do you think you're gonna say like he won this beef with Drake, right? Like how many times you know, like
Um,
in context?
uh, Probably forever, honestly. The same way
All
that
right.
I'm forever gonna say that Pusha T won the beef with Drake.
Yeah, I'm not arguing with you about
Yeah,
either result here.
yeah,
I was just curious,
yeah.
especially
No, no. I
because like we're gonna
mean,
see each other next week, and I just like need to like like prepare for that. Because
yeah.
if I'm like out having a good time, and you're like, yo, like remember that time, and I'm gonna be like, because you know how I get. I've never said Drake is the greatest rapper of all time,
Uh,
and if I did, I wasn't all the way
I'm playing
there.
Euphoria.
I wasn't all the way there when I said it, and you know that. That's one of the
Yes.
first things that me and you, the first time neither of us were all the way there, we had a conversation about.
That being said, thank you for tuning in to episode 524 of the Cat Podcast. Don't forget to leave your opinion of GNX by Kendrick Lamar in the comments below. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Follow Old Milk on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok at Old Milk Media, and check out oldmilk.co for more information. I'm Nate Sperlin, that is Taylor McLeod, and we will be back when hip hop tells us to be, which will be for our season finale. Thank you for watching, and we are out. Oh.